I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me a long time ago. It's called the Kimberly story. It doesn't have any kind of scary ending or anything like that. Everything's true. You can investigate it. A lot of people have. A lot of people wish they wouldn't have. Because you see, the more you think about this story, the more you become part of this story. And then even you can't get out. I was working at a school in El Paso, Texas a long time ago, and I had a young lady in my class named Kimberly. And Kimberly was a very shy, quiet little girl, long, dark hair, short, petite little girl, and she never said much in class. She'd been in my class, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks, something like that, and then all of a sudden she failed to show up in class. So after about a week, I contacted the counselors to see if there's any work I could send home or anything I could do. And they said they'd been trying to call the house and nobody had answered, and they'd even called the parents' work, and the parents had never showed up for work. So we assumed that she had moved. After another week or so, I was talking to my kids like I'm talking to you guys, and the door opened up. And I could tell by the look in my students' eyes something was wrong. I turned and looked, and standing in the doorway was Kimberly. She had a long white dress on. It was all dirty and frayed at the bottom. Her hair was all matted and dirty. Her face was really thin. Her eyes were sunk in the back of her head. She looked terrible. And I looked at her and I said, "Kimberly, what happened to you? Where have you been? What's going on?" She started to rub her hand, and she looked down, and then she goes, "Poor Kimberly, poor Kimberly." I said, "Honey, what happened to you?" And she just dropped her head. Her hair fell down in front of her eyes. She didn't say another word. So I called security to come up and watch my class, and I took her down to the nurse. Of course, the nurse asked me, "My God, what happened?" And I told her exactly what I'm just telling you. Well, in a case like that, they always have to call the police department, and the gentleman that showed up was Officer Johnny Herrera, and he showed up and asked me some questions and filled out some forms, and of course we had to call an ambulance, and Kimberly was taken to the hospital. Well, I went back up to my room and settled the kids down and finished the day at school, and I was sitting at my desk grading, and the phone rang, and it was Officer Herrera, and he asked me some more questions and said, "Listen, I need to go to her house, and if I would go with him." And I said, "Well, sure, but from what I understand, the parents aren't there and they haven't even answered the phone in over a week or so." He said, "I know, but you've met the parents before at a parent-teacher conference, and I was just wondering if you'd go." And I said, "Of course I would." So Officer Herrera, Johnny, he picks me up, and we leave school, and where Kimberly lives is a little farming community called Fabens. It's right outside of El Paso. It's about a 10-15 minute drive. And it's an old farming community. A lot of the buildings are abandoned. People still live there, but it's not a very populated town. So he takes us to Fabens. We drive down Shoemaker Street, and there's a bunch of old abandoned turn-of-the-century homes there. A lot of old ones that have been abandoned, a few people living in some of them. And Kimberly's house was one of those. So we pull in front of this house, and it was a strange 3-story red brick house. It was very narrow. A lot of dead trees around it. Kind of spooky looking, to be honest. So we get out of the squad car, and we're looking at this building, and Officer Herrera says, "That building looks haunted." And I said, "Such thing as haunted houses?" And he's like, "Yeah, there is." And I said, "No, there's not." And he said, "Well, you go first." I said, "Well, you have a gun." So I went first. So I remember walking up these concrete steps, and it was about 2 or 3 steps up, and there was the door. I went to knock on the door, and it kind of just opened when I knocked on it. So we walked inside, and the first thing that hit us was a strange smell, a burnt, musty type smell. And when we went into the house, there was a little room right there, like a living room, with a hallway that went to the kitchen and a living room, and then some stairs that went to the 2nd and the 3rd floor. So we're looking around, and everything was neat but kind of dusty, like nobody had been there for a while. So Officer Herrera went to the back, and he was looking around. I was looking around the living room, and he called me. He said, "Hey, come on back here." So I went back to the kitchen area, and I was like, "Whoa, what is that smell?" He goes, "Yeah, something's rotted or something." So we're looking around, and I don't know, for some reason the refrigerator caught my attention. It was kind of one of those old rounded refrigerators. So I grabbed the handle and opened it, and when I did, the smell just about knocked me down. Inside the refrigerator door, somebody had pinned a dog the dog was dead and had been completely disemboweled, insides completely removed, and it was starting to rot, and that was that terrible smell. So Johnny calls animal control on his radio, and they come over and they remove the dog's carcass. We look around a little bit more, we can't see anything. So Officer Herrera takes me back to the school that I was working at, and I go back to grading some papers. Another week goes by, maybe 10 days, I'm not sure, and I get a phone call from Johnny, Officer Herrera, and he said, hey, listen, I'd like for you to go with me to Alpine, Texas. And I said, what's in Alpine? He said, well, we had to put Kimberly in the insane asylum there. I said, they put that little girl in an insane asylum? He said, yeah, I know, it's a terrible place, but they think she can get some help there. We don't know what's wrong with her, but something terribly bad has happened to her. So I said, yeah, pick me up on a Saturday when I'm not working. So that Saturday, Johnny picked me up, and we're driving to Alpine. I'm going to say it's about an hour, maybe a little more outside of El Paso. And as we're driving out there, I said, hey, Johnny, what'd they find out about the dog? He said, yeah, it's kind of strange. He said the dog had been disemboweled by 2 fine razor-like teeth. I said, razor-like teeth? He goes, yeah, strange. He goes, the dog's tongue had been cut out. He goes, and they found a hair inside the dog's chest cavity. I said, well, Johnny, a dog's going to get hair. He's got hair on the outside. He's going to get in his chest cavity. He goes, no, that dog had short hair. The hair they found inside this dog was this long black hair with a brownish tan tip. So what kind of hair was it? And animal control said it proved to be some kind of ape-like creature. So there's no ape-like creatures out here. And he goes, I'm just telling you what they told me. So about that time we pulled into Alpine, and like I said, there's not much there except on the right-hand side. There used to be an insane asylum right off the freeway there. And it looks like a prison, to be quite honest with you. It's a terrible-looking place. So we drive down, and the superintendent's waiting for us. He already got a call from the police department saying we were on our way. So we unlock a few gates, and we go inside of the building, and there's this conference room. We go inside. There's this oval table. So I sit down, and Officer Herrera sits next to me, and a doctor sits to my left. And we wait a few minutes, and 2 nurses open the door, and they each have Kimberly by the arm, and they're bringing her inside. And her hair's hanging down. Her long black hair is hanging in front of her face. She sits down across from me, and she won't look up. So I look at her, and I said, Kimberly, tell me what's happened. What's going on? Where are your parents? And she looks at me, and she starts to rub her hand again. And she said, they live in the walls. I said, they what? She said, they live in the walls. I said, honey, nothing can live in walls. What are you talking about? She dropped her head and wouldn't say another word, no matter what I asked her. So after a few minutes, they take her outside, and Johnny started filling out some paperwork, and he asked the doctor, he goes, hey, what's she been doing? What's going on? I said, well, we have her in a locked room, and there's a glass little window we can watch, but she doesn't do anything. She just stands there. I said, stands there and does what? And he looks at me and says, stares at the walls. So we get up to leave, and we go outside the gates, and we get in the squad car, and we jump up on the freeway, and we're heading back to El Paso. And Johnny's phone goes off, or his radio goes off in his squad car, and he's talking, and I can tell something's going on, and with the Kimberly story. And after a few minutes, he gets done talking on the radio, and I said, what's going on? He said, well, forensic went out to the Kimberly house there, and they were looking around, and they found 2 shallow graves. They'd been freshly dug. And I said, well, they find any bodies? He said, they found Kimberly's mom and dad inside the shallow graves. I go, oh, it's crazy. He goes, yeah, and they've been chewed on the bones by 2 fine razor-like teeth. I said, you mean like the dog? He goes, yeah. And they even found some of that long black hair with a brownish tan tip on some of the bones. So about that time, we get back, and Johnny drops me off at my house, and he goes home, and a couple of weeks go by, and by then, Officer Herrera, or Johnny, like I like to call him, we become pretty good friends. And we're over at my house in the backyard by the pool drinking some iced tea. And we're talking, and Johnny said, hey, listen, I've got to go back to Alpine. You might want to go with me. And I go, what do you got to go back for? He said, well, I've got to arrest Kimberly. I said, for what? He goes, look, we've got 2 dead bodies in the backyard, and we've got a girl that won't talk. I said, Johnny, I don't think that little girl killed her parents. He goes, look, I don't either. I got to do what my captain says, and I've got to go arrest her and bring her back. I I go, yeah, I want to go with you. She's going to be scared to death. So the next Saturday, he picks me up, and we start heading towards Alpine. And we noticed kind of a lot of extra police on the road, highway patrol, border patrol, even some helicopters, kind of strange. So we pull into Alpine, and we drive down towards the insane asylum, and the superintendent's waiting for us, and he can tell something's wrong. And so Officer Herrera rolls down his window and says, "What's going on?" Says, "Well, we got your call, and we're going to get Kimberly ready for transport." So we went to her room, unlocked it, went inside, and she had disappeared. And Johnny said, "Disappeared? Hey, you disappeared from this place. It's like a prison." He goes, "I know. We have no clue. We locked her in that night, and somehow she got out." I said, how did she get out? We don't know. I said, "Well, that little girl's going to die out here in this desert in the middle of nowhere." I said, "I know. We've got extra guys on horseback out. We got helicopters out. We got people looking everywhere for her." So we turn around. We start heading back to El Paso. And on the road, Johnny tells me about this new light they have that the police departments are starting to use. I said, what kind of light is it? He goes, "Well, it kind of works like a black light. If you take it into a room and you shine it, it has to be all dark, and blood has been spilt anywhere, it shows up like a purple color." Now, they use that all the time today, but back in those days, it was something brand new. He goes, "We're going to use that at the Kimberly house tonight." I said, "Hey, man, I'd like to go." And he goes, "Yeah, as long as I go, you can go." I said, "Yeah, I'd like to be there. I'd like to see that." So later that evening, a van pulls up, and Officer Herrera's in the van, and two other police officers and myself, and we head out to Kimberly's house in Fabens. So we turn on Shoemaker Street and go about 4 or 5 houses down, and that was Kimberly's house. Most of them, like I said, were abandoned, pretty old. And we get in the front, and it's just starting to get dark. So the officer that had the light, he kind of had it hanging off of his neck on a strap. It's kind of a large-looking light, almost like a small floodlight. So we're walking around the whole house, and when it finally gets dark, he turns the light on, and he starts shining it on the walls of the house. And it makes everything look black and white, really strange. And so he's shining it on the walls, on the dead trees everywhere. We're looking on the windows. You know, we go all the way around the entire house, okay, shining it up to the 3rd floor, everything. There's no purple anywhere. So we go inside the house, we go up the steps, and we push open the door, and he walks in, and he nods to go upstairs. So he goes first, followed by the other officer, Johnny Herrera, and myself. And like I said, it's an old house. The stairs are all wooden, the floors are all wooden. So they're creaking pretty good while we're going up the stairs. And we get to the 2nd floor, and he's shining the light down the hallway and inside the bedroom, which appeared to be Kimberly's parents' bedroom. Again, we had that burnt, musty smell we could smell. But the room was neat and clean. The bed was made, but everything was kind of dusty, like nobody had been there for a while. They shine the light everywhere, into the bathroom, everywhere, the closets, okay, nothing. So we're standing in the hallway, it's kind of dark, and he comes back out, and he starts heading up to the 3rd floor. And we're walking up these creaky steps, and we get up to the 3rd floor. And again, he goes down the hallway, and there's a big closet, and he opens it and looks in there, and there's nothing. He comes back, and he goes inside the bedroom, which appears to be Kimberly's bedroom. And again, nothing, there's no purple anywhere. Goes in the bathroom and checks the ceilings, everything. We go downstairs. He's going first. The officer's heading down the stairs first, going down the stairs, followed by the other officer, then Officer Herrera, and then, of course, myself. And as we're heading down the stairs, it's so dark. I can just see that beam of light, the black and white look of that bead of light. It's just going back and forth. So he starts going down, and I'm about where the 2nd floor is, and he's all the way to the bottom. Really strange. He turned the corner, and I'm getting close to the bottom, and I can hear him. He's back into the kitchen area, and I hear him say, "Oh my God!" And I'm thinking, what is going on? So as I walk down the hallway into the kitchen, there's purple everywhere in the kitchen. It's on the ceilings, it's on the side, it's on the countertops, it's on the floor. Just like whatever happened, there was a bloody mess. So they turn off that light, and we turn on the regular lights, and of course they're taking little pieces of wood and whatever, and I don't know, they're going to do samples of it or check it or something, I don't know. And they write some reports and fill some stuff out, take some measurements and all that other stuff. And finally, after a little while, they load up in the van and they take me back home. So, I don't know, another week or so goes by, and nobody knows what's going on. And I'm reading the paper. And back then there was a really a bad problem with the occult. People were doing a lot of devil worshiping. And while that in and of itself isn't a crime, there was a lot of animal sacrifices going on, which is. So I was reading this article in the paper while I was at school during a break. So I call Officer Hedera at his work and I say, hey, Johnny, listen, man, I'm reading this article about this sergeant. I can't give you his name. I said, he goes, yeah, he's working with some things with the occult. And I said, do you think he might know what's going on? He goes, well, I don't know. You think it has something to do with that? I said, I don't know. It's just a thought. So he says, yeah, I'll check with him and get back to you. So, I don't know, this was in the middle of the day. Towards the end of the day, all of a sudden, this bell's getting ready to ring for the end of the day, and the door opens up, and Officer Herrera walks in. He looks kind of spooked, and I'm like, what's up? He goes, wait till your kids leave. So the kids leave, and I said, what's going on? He goes, man, I talked to that sergeant about what might be going on with Kimberly in the house and everything. I said, oh, cool. What did he say? He said he thinks he might know what's going on. Oh, that's good. He goes, no, it's not. It's not good at all. And I go, why not? He goes, well, because he wants us to spend the night in that house. I said, well, that's a great idea, Johnny. He says, it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea at all. I said, are you afraid? He goes, yes. I said, you're afraid of a little girl? He goes, yes. Okay, fine. We picked a date, and we decided to spend there another Friday night this time. So this other sergeant, he wanted to get there early while it was still light. So we get there, and he's walking around the house, and we're showing him everything, and we walk through the entire house, show him everything. And so I said, what are we looking for? He says, well, we're not looking for anything. We're listening for something. I said, what are we listening for? He said, you'll know when you hear it. So inside the house, like I said, in the front was a living room. There was two couches that were like catty corner. And he brought like a cot that he set down there. And as it got dark, we were playing some cards and just talking and stuff. And finally, it started getting late, so we hadn't heard anything, so we laid down. So I don't know what time it was, maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. I don't know. I just woke up, and it's pretty darn dark, but I can see that sergeant sitting up in his cot, and he's just staring. I said, hey, Sergeant, what's wrong? He goes, shh, listen. I can't hear anything. He goes, it's coming from upstairs. Listen. I said, I can't hear anything. He goes, she'll be right back. I said, wait. Let me wake up Johnny. We'll go with you. He goes, no, I got to go alone. You stay here. So he has this little flashlight. He turns it on. And I can see him. I can see the beam of light as he starts walking up the stairs. And then I can hear him walking on the second floor because, like I said, the floors are made of wood and it's pretty creaky. And then it's quiet. And after a few minutes, I can hear that he's going up to the third floor. And I can hear him walking around for a little bit, and then it's quiet. And I wait. And then I guess I fell back asleep because I opened my eyes and it's daylight. Sergeant's not in his cot, so I wake up Officer Herrera and I say, hey, wake up, Johnny, wake up. He goes, what's going on? What's happening? Hey, where's the sergeant? I said, I don't know, man. He goes, what do you mean you don't know? So he was sitting up in the middle of the night, said he was hearing noises, and he had to go investigate. Why didn't you wake me up? I said, he told me not to. He said he had to go by himself. Well, we went upstairs to the second and third floor. We looked everywhere, and we never found that sergeant. There's been a couple of specials on TV about it, and they have never heard or seen from that sergeant again, and he left behind a wife and 2 kids. Although I think later on in the story we might know what did happen to him. So now they're thinking about tearing down this house, okay, because it's all over the news about a quote unquote haunted house in Favens where a girl killed her parents and she's eating dogs or something, and a police officer disappeared inside there. So they're talking about tearing the building down because it's becoming a problem, because what's happening is a lot of the teenagers that could drive in the El Paso area would take their girlfriends and drive by the house. And of course, it's dark and spooky looking, and all the stories about it, the girlfriend gets scared and sit a little closer, so he'd drive by and they'd get a little bit closer, and he'd drive by again, the girl a little bit closer, he'd drive by again, the girl a little bit closer, and the next thing you know, a baby's born. So they decide they're going to tear down the house. So again, about a week goes by, and Johnny and I think we're in his backyard by the pool, drinking some iced tea, and we're talking about they're tearing the house down and stuff, and I'm like, hey Johnny, something about that house that's spooky. He goes, yeah, everything about that house is spooky. I went, no Johnny, listen. I said, you remember the blood in the kitchen? It was everywhere, right? He goes, yeah. I said, you notice right there where that big old air conditioning vent, that heating air conditioning vent was, there was no blood? He's like, yeah, what's that all about? And I said, I don't know. He goes, hey, wait a minute, why that? Turn of the century homes don't have heating and air conditioning. I said, well, yeah, what they did is they put a false ceiling above the original ceiling, then they put this big piping in there, and then they can pipe air conditioning and heating through those big old vents. It's old school stuff. He goes, oh, okay. I said, but there was no blood on the vents. Why was there no blood? There's blood everywhere, but no blood up there. What do you think that means? I said, I don't know, you're a cop, you tell me. So we keep talking, and next thing you know, he calls me and goes, hey, I told my sergeant what you mentioned, and they want to send some people up there, crawl around up in those vents, search and rescue or something. I was like, oh, okay. So what they did is they ended up building a scaffold like painters used to paint ceilings right below this big air conditioning vent in the kitchen of Kimberly's house. And these two search and rescue guys went up there and they're crawling around. We can hear them. They're up there, and I'm sitting down there, or standing down there with Johnny. And I'm looking up there, and we're just kind of talking about stuff. And I keep looking up there and looking up there. And Officer Head Ed says, why are you looking up there all the time? I said, because I want to go up there. He goes, you can't go up there unless I go up there. I said, I know. So he calls me a name, and we go up the scaffold. And I remember he hands me a flashlight. It's one of those small ones that they carry, okay? And he takes the big one. He said, look, I'm going to go that way. You go left. And he goes, don't go far. Just look around and come back out. And I said, okay. So he goes, hey, I just put fresh batteries in this flashlight. I said, okay. So he crawls off to the right, and I crawl off to the left in this big old air conditioning heating duct. And it's pretty shiny. It's some kind of alloy, I don't know, whatever it is. And so I start crawling, and it's only about, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 feet. And then it turns to go to the front of the house. As I'm crawling towards that corner, the flashlight goes out. I hit the flashlight. I'm like, come on. They just put fresh batteries. No matter what I did, it wouldn't turn on. I said, all right, well, I'm going to just back out because I can barely see the light from down below in the kitchen. So I start to back out, but I notice that the turn in front of me, where the air conditioning duct goes to the front of the house, there's this glow, like an orange glow. So I thought, I'll crawl a little bit further and see what the heck that is. So as I crawl a little bit further, I turn as I get to the end of that turn, and I look all the way to the front of the house into pure darkness. It just goes into pure darkness. But about 10, 12 feet in, there was this orange glow coming from this recessed area, and that was where the air conditioning and heating unit sat, and it blew all the hot and cold air from that unit. And that orange glow was coming from in there. So I crawled a little more, and then as I got to that open area, that recessed area, I looked inside, and the first thing I saw was a pair of bare feet. And then the feet moved. And then I was going to be the fastest fat man that ever crawled out of an air conditioning duct. Okay? But I had to see what it was, so I looked, and sitting there was Kimberly. She had on that long white dress, and her feet were dirty, and the dress was all tattered and frayed at the end. Her hair was all matted. She had blood on her lips, and she was holding a candle, and that's what was causing that glow, that orange glow. Her fingernails were all long and yellow. I looked at her and I said, Kimberly, how'd you get in here? Where you been? How'd you get here? And she looked at me and she said, shh, they're here. I said, who's here? The ones that live in the walls. They're watching us. I said, honey, there's nobody here. Shh, you can hear them. I said, honey, there's nobody here. You need to come out. So I grabbed her by the feet and pulled her and guided her back through the air conditioning duct. I lowered her onto the scaffold. I whistled. I lowered her down to the ground. Johnny comes down. He's like, Michael, what the heck? What happened? I tell him exactly what I told you guys right now, except the part that I got scared. And he's like, oh, we have to arrest her. And I said, I know, Johnny. I don't know how she got up in there. So the other two officers come down. We dismantle the big scaffold. She is locked up and sent to jail. Well, there's going to be a trial. Kimberly's going to go to trial for killing her parents. But they can't find an impartial jury in El Paso because everybody's heard about this story. So they try to move the venue of the court into Las Cruces, the sister city of El Paso. But they just couldn't get an impartial jury, so they finally move it to Arizona, into Phoenix, where she's going to go to trial. About a week goes by, or maybe two, and Johnny and I are out with the girls, and we're just talking, and because then the girls, they got to meet our wives, and we got to meet each other, and we became all good friends, and we were just talking. I was like, so what's going on, Johnny? He goes, nothing right now. We don't really have any really solid evidence about what's going on. And I said, so what are you going to do? Because whatever's happening is happening inside that house. I don't understand why Kimberly's a part of it. And he goes, well, she has something to do with it. And I said, no, there's something going on in that house. So he goes, yeah, I know. We're going to put some cameras up. I said, what do you mean cameras? And again, this is something they use all the time today, but back then it was something brand new. He said, we're going to get these little bitty cameras. We can put them all over the house. Nobody can see them. And we're going to monitor everything that's going on in the house. It shows the outside doors and everything. And I said, oh, okay. So I don't think you can see anything because whatever's happening is happening in that house. And it's happening to Kimberly while she's in that house. So a week or two goes by, and Johnny comes by to visit me at school during lunch, and we're having lunch talking. And I go, what's going on? He goes, nothing. He goes, absolutely nothing. I said, I'm telling you, man, you got to put Kimberly back in that house. He's going, man, I can't take her out of jail. What if she disappears again? So if you got all those cameras going, I mean, it's pretty obvious you'll be able to find out where she's gone or if she leaves. So another week goes by, and he comes back and goes, hey, Captain said, yeah, go pick up Kimberly, put her in that house, and then we're going to monitor her 24/7 and see what's going on. So, of course, Johnny asked me to go with him to pick up Kimberly. So we drive to downtown El Paso, to the police station there, and they've got a holding cell there where Kimberly's at downstairs. And we get there, and we go downstairs into where the holding cells are, and Kimberly's just sitting there, staring blankly. So they unlock the door, and I go inside. And I said, Kimberly, you want to go back to your house for a little while? And she just looked at me. I said, honey, you don't have to go back there if you don't want to. She stands up, and she walks out the door. We kind of guide her towards the squad car. I put her in the back seat, put on her seatbelt, put her in the middle. Johnny gets in, he's going to drive. I jump in the passenger seat. We jump up on the freeway, and we're heading towards Favens. As we're driving on the freeway, opposite Hedera, Johnny keeps looking in his rear mirror. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, she's looking at me. I said, what do you mean she's looking at you? She keeps staring at me. I said, you still afraid of a little girl? Yes. So we get to Favens, and again, we pull off the road. We head up Shoemaker Street. And we're driving up the road, and we get to Kimberly's house. I remember third or fourth, the fifth house on the left, something like that. And it's the middle of the day, and I open the back door of the squad car, and I unbuckle her seatbelt, and she comes out, and I said, honey, you don't have to go in there if you don't want to. She just kind of looks at me. Then she turns, and she walks, and she heads up the steps. She looks at me one more time. Then she touches the door, and it kind of opens. She walks inside. Door closes. About a week goes by. Johnny calls me. You want to go out to dinner, take the wives? I said, sure. Remember, it was a Sunday night, and the wind blows a lot in El Paso, but this night it was blowing terribly bad. It was like a dust storm. And we went to a restaurant, and the girls are talking, and Johnny and I are talking, and we can hear the wind howling outside. I said, Johnny, what's going on in the house? He goes, nothing, man. I go, what do you mean nothing? What's Kimberly doing? She gets up, walks around, stares. I said, stares at what? The walls. Then she sleeps. He says, nothing. I said, well, how does that all work? Is somebody watching it from nearby or what? He goes, yeah, we got a police van that's down the street on the left-hand side. It's unmarked, and we got two officers in there monitor everything. So I have more questions I asked. Johnny's like, hey, you want to drive by there and go see it? And we can drop the girls off at home, and then we'll drive by. And I went, yeah, sure, that sounds good. So we get done eating and get into a car, and we take the wives home. Like I said, it was a terrible night. Wind blowing like crazy, dusty, bad night. So anyways, we start heading back to Favens, and there's not a lot of street lights. It's really dark there, especially on the street that where Kimberly lived. So we're driving on Shoemaker Street, and we're passing houses, and we pass Kimberly's house. You could barely see it in the dark. I mean, barely see it. And two more houses past that, there's a van parked in the street, and it's facing away from Kimberly's house. So we pull in front of it, and Johnny gets out, and he says something, and the other officers come out, and they take the vehicle, and off they go. They're gonna go get some coffee and come back in about half an hour. So Johnny and I go inside the van. And in the back of the van is like a small desk with 2 seats, and then there's 12 monitors. They're all in black and white. And then there's just 2 chairs where you the driver and a passenger, and the van's facing this way. Kimberly's house is off to the left, a couple houses. So we're looking at the monitors, and monitor 1 was Kimberly's bedroom, and we could see her, she's sleeping. It's like from the top corner looking down on her bed. And then there's a hallway, and then the stairs going there, and the parents' bedroom, and the kitchen, living room, the front of the house, back of the house, everything's monitored. And then there's a separate monitor over here, and then, like I said, there's a desk with some writing stuff and notepads. So Johnny showed me everything, how it works, and I go, what's a separate monitor for? He goes, well, if we capture something on the tapes, this was VHS tape days, he goes, we can replay it or watch it again if we have some questions in our mind about it. I was okay. And then I said, what's all the notepad? Well, if she does something, we write it down, like right here, Kimberly gets up, walks around, blah, blah, blah. So I'm looking and say, hey, Johnny, read this right here. What is that? I said, there's supposedly a dog that's living underneath her bed. He's like, what? I said, it says it right there, look. I said, can you find that tape and replay it? He goes, what's the number next to it? I don't remember it now, but whatever the number was, he pulls out the tape, and I give him whatever the number is for the recording, and he puts it in that separate monitor, hits rewind and stops it, and then hits play. And sure enough, we can watch Kimberly, like I said, the camera's from the top corner looking down on her bed. And she walks in, she sits down at the edge of the bed for a minute, and she lays down, and she puts her arm down. And then a dog came out from under the bed, kind of nuzzled her hand a little bit like that, went back, and then Kimberly crossed her arms like that and went to sleep. I said, yeah, Johnny, there's a dog living under her bed. I didn't know there was any dogs in that house. I thought the only one we found was dead. And he goes, yeah, that's a weird looking dog. I said, hey, rewind that and hit slow motion. Can you zoom in a little bit? So he does, so we hit rewind and he zooms in, and then we hit slow motion. Well, this dog that comes out from under her bed, it's got this real pointed nose. It got like a bump on it, but a real pointed long nose, and the tongue was like almost so long and thin. It didn't look normal, and it kind of like wrapped around her hand. And then I said, hey, Johnny, look at the eyes on that dog. He goes, what do you mean? I said, look at the white on that dog. You see white around the eyes. You can't see the white on a dog's eyes. Johnny said, well, maybe it's a raccoon. I said, ain't no raccoon. Look at that thing. Well, just about then, all of a sudden, Johnny goes, stop, Kimberly's away. So we stop the monitor. We look at monitor number 1, and Kimberly is sitting up in her bed. And she sits there for about a minute. Then she turns her head real slow, and she looks right at us. I said, Johnny, she's looking at the camera. Johnny says, you can't see it. It's impossible. I said, well, she's looking right at us. Then she stands up, and she starts walking towards us. And then all of a sudden, the camera goes out, goes blank. The monitor's blank. Johnny said, crap, something's wrong with the monitor. I said, I'm watching it. I got it, Johnny. He goes, watch the rest of the monitors. Make sure she doesn't get out. I said, I'm watching it, Johnny. I'm watching it. He stands up. He's trying to mess with the buttons on the monitor. I got everything. Don't worry about it, Johnny. BAM! All of a sudden, the van gets hit. It just rocks. And Johnny goes, somebody hit the van. Keep watching the monitors. I'm watching the monitors. Johnny opens the back door, and he goes, there's nobody there, and he closes it. And I'm still watching the monitors, and then I can tell he's looking to the front of the van. I know something's wrong. And I went, Johnny? And he's just staring. And I turn and I look, and inside the van was Kimberly. And it looked like she was floating or something. And she had this evil look in her face. Her eyes had this beady red glare to them. And she went, why are you watching me? And then she flew at me, and I put my hand up. She ripped into my hand and just bit a huge piece off. We wrestled her to the ground. She's hissing like a snake. Johnny's bigger than I am. I don't know where this girl got her power from. So Johnny finally gets his belt off, and we get her hands behind her back. He ties her hands up at the belt. Johnny unlocks the side door. We pull her out and lay her on the pavement, and she's like hissing like a snake again. And Johnny goes, what happened? Did you come down the stairs? I said, Johnny, she never left her room. What do you mean? I said, Johnny, I watched all the monitors. She never left her room. How'd she get in the van? I don't know. Just about then, the other police officers come back. We tell them what's going on. They look at my hand, and a whole piece was bitten off. We never found it. I hope she enjoyed it. And so they called the ambulance. They rushed me to the hospital. I ended up going to emergency surgery and have my hand fixed. Kimberly was arrested, of course, taken downtown. They ended up taking all the cameras and stuff out, and Kimberly's going to go to trial. Well, like I said, I was in a cast in, I don't know, almost 2 months or something. But anyways, we were visiting again, Johnny and I were, because we became very good friends. We still are. And we were watching some football or something on TV. And I said, hey, Johnny, when's the house coming down? He said, from what I understand, tomorrow. I said, hey, man, there's something about that house. He goes, nope, I don't want to hear about it. It's over. She's going to try. I said, no, Johnny, just a minute. Let me finish. I said, listen, what was under the bed? Johnny said, I don't know. I don't care. I'm not going back. I said, Johnny, come on. They're going to tear the house down. I want to see what was under the bed. He goes, you can't go there unless I go there. I said, I know. So he called me a name, and we went there. And we drove to Kimberly's house in Favens. And again, it was on a Sunday afternoon. And we go up the stairs, and we go to Kimberly's bedroom. And I can't operate very well, so Johnny kind of pulls the bed away from the wall. And we're looking, and there's nothing under the bed. But we found that long black hair with a brownish tan tip. It was underneath the bed. The same hair that was found on the bones of her parents in the backyard, and that was found inside the dog's chest cavity. I said, Johnny, is that the same hair? He goes, yeah, it's the same stuff. And he goes, hey, look at this wall. I go, what? He goes, it's loose. I go, what do you mean it's loose? He goes, look at these bricks. He starts pulling bricks out, and it forms like a pyramid. I go, what the heck is that? And he goes, there's another wall behind it. I said, well, some of these houses, they double bricked them, and inside there probably some piping or electrical lines on the bottom. He goes, yeah. I say, that kind of worked as insulation as well. And so he's looking inside. He takes his flashlight. He's looking. All of a sudden, he goes, oh my God. I go, what? He goes, look. And he pulls out a ballpoint pen that was laying there. And that ballpoint pen said El Paso Police Department. And it had the missing sergeant's name on it. Johnny said, I got to go. I said, I know. I'll go with you. So we walked around the whole third floor. And it's just a little hallway with a terrible burnt, musty smell in it. And we go all the way around, and where the fireplace is, there's like this rebar, like stairs that go to the second floor. So we go down to the second floor. We walk around this whole corridor that goes around the entire second floor. There's nothing there. So then Johnny goes down to the first floor, and I'm right behind him. And as I'm getting ready to put my foot down, he grabs me, he pulls me off to the side. He goes, watch out, there's a hole right there. Must be a basement. I said, where? He goes, there's a hole right there. And I went, whoa. So he shines his flashlight. We can't even see the bottom of it. So, I don't know, it was about 5 foot by 5 or 6 foot. So I grab some change, a nickel or a quarter, I don't remember, I just threw it down, and we never heard it hit the bottom. I said, Johnny, this ain't no basement, it's like a cave. He's like, well, what do you think? I said, well, you know what? I've got a friend named Steve, and he's a speedlunker. These guys that go in and out of caves and do all that kind of crap. He goes, you think he'll come over here? And I said, might as well give it a try. I don't think they'll let him go down once they tear this house down. So we crawl all the way back out. We get to a payphone at one of the local stores, and because this was pre-cell phone day. And I call Steve up and I tell him, hey, listen, we found this entrance to, we think is a cave at the bottom of Kimberly's house. I kind of explained the story to him. He goes, yeah, I'd like to go down in there. And I said, well, you know the whole story about the house and her and parent. He goes, yeah, listen, I don't believe in all that stuff. I said, I'm not worried about it. I'll go down there. I said, oh, okay. So anyways, he shows up, and it took us a while, but we ended up setting his equipment up over this hole, okay, going all the way up to the third floor, all the way through, carrying it down. It took us hours. And we set up this like A-frame, and there was like a spool of rope in the middle with a crank on it, and then there was like hooked to a leather seat. And Steve was sitting in the seat, and he had a helmet on with a light, and he had a big flashlight. And he said, now lower me. I said, well, how far are you going to go? He goes, well, the rope is color-coded. About every 50 feet it changes color. I said, okay. So we start lowering him. And again, that burnt, musty smell was really strong coming out of that hole. And as we're lowering, I could see the light, two lights, you know, the beam of the one on his head looking around, and then the one on his hand. And I was like, whoa. And he's like, this place is huge. And we kept lowering him and lowering him. And he got down 200 feet and it stopped. So I told Johnny, I said, he's at the bottom. He was right at 200 feet. So we wait and we wait. And Johnny says, hey, pull on the rope. And I pulled on? I said, he's not on it, Johnny. He goes, hey, you need to pull it up. Something's wrong. I said, Johnny, he's not on the rope. He goes, I know, we can lower it again. Just pull it up. Something's wrong. I go, been a cop too long. I said, oh, okay. So I didn't even use the crank. I was just pulling with my hands as fast as I could. And as I get towards the bottom, I said, hey, there must be water down here. My hands are wet. And Johnny took his flashlight and shined it on my hands. And they were covered in blood. The harness that Steve had been sitting on had been completely ripped off. I don't know how you can rip that rope, but it was ripped off, the harness and everything. There was blood all over the end of it. So Johnny says, crap, we got to get out of here. We got to call my captain. So we crawl all the way out there. We call the captain at the payphone. We tell him what's going on. He said, get out of the house. We'll send somebody down there tomorrow when they take out the house. So the next day they did destroy the house. They pulled it all off, and there was an entrance to a cave. Well, we were lucky because there were some speedunkers working a cave somewhere near Carlsbad, New Mexico, and they sent 3 people over, 2 guys and a gal, and they went down there. They spent a couple of hours down there. They went in there 2 or 3 times, and they called it a dead cave, which I guess that means no stalagmites, no stalactites, no animal life, nothing. They said it was spooky. They'd never seen anything like that. He said there was little caves and little entrances that went way back in, but they couldn't get back in there. They were too big. But with the flashlight, they seemed to just keep going forever. They never found Steve. They never found blood. They never found flashlights. They never found the harness. Nothing. There was nothing down there. Well, they sealed that entrance, and it's sealed to this day. It's got a big concrete, like a wall around it with a metal plate, and there's a memorial to Steve on the outside. So now they're moving the trial, and they take it to, like I said, Arizona. Me traveling back and forth from El Paso to Arizona, I kind of fell in love with Arizona. I ended up moving here, and Kimberly was found guilty of killing her parents, and I don't know, biting a teacher. If it's not a crime, it should be. And she was put in one of the local prisons here. I think we all know which one it is here in Arizona. And that should be the end of the story. But it's not. I moved here, and I've been here about 6-7 months, maybe a little longer. Officer Herrera, Johnny calls me, and he goes, hey, how's everything going in Chandler? And I said, great, man, love it here, man. This is awesome. Love the school I'm working at. He said, good. Hey, listen, the wife and I and kids want to go to Disneyland. We're going to come by. I said, hey, spend the night with us, man, before you head over there. So he does, and we're in the backyard by the pool drinking some iced tea, and we're just talking, and finally I said, hey, Johnny, anything ever come up any more about that Kimberly stuff? And of course, he gets real quiet, and I'm like, all right, Johnny, what's up? He goes, nah, nothing, man. I said, okay, Johnny, I've been through this whole thing with you, man. What's going on? Well, I said, come on, Johnny. Okay, you know they put her in the prison. I said, yeah. Well, after about 4 or 5 months, she started talking. Well, I thought they had her in solitary confinement. Well, they did. But she started talking, getting friendly. I said, Kimberly was talking? And yeah. So they put her in with the general population at the prison. She had a cellmate. What happened? Well, the very first morning, they went to her cell to feed him breakfast, and Kimberly was gone. I said, wait a minute. She disappeared like from the insane asylum. Yeah. I said, oh, come on, you can't disappear from that prison. He goes, look, they walk inside. Her cellmate was still laid in bottom bunk, I guess, and she was covered up. When they pulled the cover, she was dead. She'd been completely disemboweled by 2 fine razor-like teeth. They found long black hair with a brownish tan tip inside of her chest cavity. And they found a hole in the back corner of the cell. It'd been like scratched through, and they found some of that long black hair with a brownish tan tip. I said, so that's how she got out that hole? No, the hole was too small. Well, what the heck made that hole? He goes, we don't know. But Kimberly's disappeared. So another, I think 6 months goes by, and I was teaching class, and we were talking about the Salem witch trials. And I was teaching junior high at the time, and one of the students says, you don't believe in witches? I said, no, I'll be honest with you, I don't believe in a lot of supernatural stuff. So one of the kids says, something ever happened to you that's been really strange? Yeah. Yeah, what? And I said, student one time, kind of some weird stuff. Well, tell us. I went, no, come on, tell us. I went, all right, fine. So I shut the lights off and turned a little light on like this, and I told them about the Kimberly story. Of course, I forgot they were junior high students, so when I turned the light back on, they were all huddled together, crying and holding each other. I was like, oh boy, I'm in trouble. And I told them, I said, every time I seem to tell this story, something happens. He said, no, nothing's going to happen. So I go home that day, and I pick up my phone, and there's this like this hissing sound, hello, hello? And somebody comes on and says, do you believe? You better believe. I thought it was one of them religious fellas. I said, I believe, brother, I believe. And then I heard this click. So I thought, oh, wait a minute, that was one of my students, because I said I don't believe in this kind of stuff. So I call the operator, and she comes on, and I said, yes, ma'am, excuse me. I didn't tell her who I am, and I said, can you tell me if I had a phone call to my house? Yeah, sure, I'll be right back. She comes back 20 seconds later. She goes, you didn't have a call to your house. And I went, yeah, somebody just talked to me. No, sir, we got no evidence of a call coming to your house. Thank you. So hang on. So another year goes by, they open the big high school here. I get transferred to the high school. Some of the students that I'd scared the crap out of, they're at the high school. Hey, tell that story again. I went, no, every time I tell something happens, then you guys were scared to death anyways. No, tell the story. I said, okay, fine. They're high school students. So I tell the story. A few days later, I'm sitting at my desk. Office calls. Hey, there's a parent here to see you. I said, oh, okay. He's a preacher. Okay, well, the bell's going to ring here in a minute. All the students will be gone. Be the end of the day. Send them on up. So students leave, and I'm sitting at my desk. This gentleman comes in. He sits down. I said, yes, sir, what can I help you with? And he tells me who his daughter is. I said, oh, yeah. He goes, listen, she told me about the Kimberly story. I said, oh, listen, I'm sorry. She got scared. I apologize. No. I want you to understand something. I believe you. I said, you believe me? He goes, Mr. Hermanski, I need you to be very careful. I said, why is that? He said, you read the Bible, don't you? Yeah, I own one, yes. He goes, well, in the Bible, they talk about the hounds from hell. They do the devil's evil deeds, and they get in the smallest and strangest of places. I'm originally from Mexico, and down there they call them chupacabras. Every legends in Ireland and in China and other places talk about these hounds from hell. You need to be careful. Well, thank you. So I tell a story the next year. A couple days later, a young man named Justin walks into my classroom, and he throws a newspaper down. He goes, Mr. H, check this out. And I go, what? Because something always happens after you tell the story. I said, yeah, look at this. And the headlines in the paper says, woman and 3 children found slain in a home. They've been murdered. Well, oh man, I don't want to read that. That's terrible stuff. He goes, no, read it. Just read the first paragraph. Well, I guess they had a house sitter or a nanny or whatever, a maid, and her name was Kimberly. And she's disappeared. And he goes, that could be her. And I'm like, no, come on. Kimberly's a pretty common name. He goes, no, it's her. And I went, okay, fine, whatever. And then 2 or 3 days later, they talk about the house where this woman was killed and her 3 kids. Behind that house is a canal. It's in the town of Gilbert. And when you drive by the canal at night, you can see a girl standing there on the canal in a long white dress with long hair. And when you walk up to her, she disappears. But people from far away can see she's still standing next to you. So I go home that day, I pick up my phone to make a call, and there's that shh. I go, hello, do you believe now? You better believe. We're watching you. Click. So I call the operator, and this gentleman answers, and I said, sir, can you trace my call, please? I had a call coming to my house. He goes, sure, just a minute. And he comes back 25 seconds later. He said, you didn't have a call to your house. And I went, somebody just talked to me. Sir, we've got no evidence a call came. I said, thank you. So the next year comes up, And I was getting ready to tell the story, actually. I got to school pretty early, and I usually get here when it's still dark, and I sit at my desk, turn on a little light, and I check my emails and do my notes and read a little bit or whatever. And I was sitting at my desk, and I barely could make out my classroom, but somebody was sitting at one of my desks. Wow, how'd you get in here? Who is that? Who are you? No answer. So I got up and turned on the big light. There was nobody there. Okay, my imagination, right? Well, I start moving the desks around like I always do when I tell the story. I make a big like circle here. And when I went to the desk where I thought that person was sitting, it was warm, as if somebody had been sitting in it. So I tell the story, and then later, I don't know, it was maybe 2 or 3 months after I tell the story, the SRO officer at our high school calls me downstairs, and he said, "Hey, come on in, close the door." I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" He goes, "Look at these reports on my desk." And he had 4 reports, I believe 4 or 5 reports. He said, "Last Sunday night, they saw a girl with a long white dress with long hair walking on top of the school." I said, "Oh, it's probably students just saying that, perpetuating the story." He goes, "No, man. This is from a mother who was leaving early to take her kid to the hospital or something. This is from a truck driver. This is when a fireman going off duty." And I called and talked to every one of them, and they said they saw a girl up there. And he goes, "Are you telling some kind of story about a girl like that?" Oh, yeah. Yeah, I am. So I'm trying to decide whether I want to tell a story again, right? It's just, but the students keep saying, "Come on, tell a story, tell a story." So I tell the story one more time, and I go home, pick up the phone, and there's that static again. I go, "Hello, who's this?" "Do you believe now? You better believe we're watching you." I said, "How are you watching me?" "Look at the vents. You'll see our eyes in the vents." Click. So I'm trying to decide if I ever want to tell the story again. Nothing serious has happened. I don't know if maybe all this can be explained. So the next year when I tell it, this one young lady actually heard it like 3 times. She was in my class, and then she was a senior, so she got out early, so she came to the other 2 tellings of the story. And she worked here, but she lived out in a place called Santan. And she was driving home after work right around midnight. And she was heading up this lonely road that turns into Santan. It's a long road called Hunt Highway. And then it turns and it goes into Santan. And she said it was nobody on the road. She said in her headlights, she was driving thinking about the story. And she said she saw a girl in a long white dress with long dark hair staring at her off the side of the road. She said, she shook her head, "Oh, I gotta quit thinking about this." And she looked and there was nobody there. She goes, so she made the turn, and then she looked in her rearview mirror, and sitting in the back seat of the car was Kimberly. It scared her so bad, she flipped the car and totaled it. Luckily, she only broke her arm. And that's when I decided I think I better quit telling the story. So I had a student in my class whose father and I are very good friends, and we were going on a hunting trip, and from here to San Manuel, about an hour from here, maybe a little longer. And we load up in my truck. I got a long weekend, and we're heading out to San Manuel to do a little hunting. And he says, "Hey, my son told me about a story you tell." I said, "Yeah, some girl who kills and eats people." I said, "No, it's not the story." He goes, "Well, what is it?" I said, "It's just a Kimberly story. Something happened to a student of mine a long time ago. Weird things happen." He goes, "Well, tell it to me." I went, "No, because every time I tell something happens." He goes, "Just tell me the story. We got a long drive." I went, "Okay, fine." So I tell him the story. When I finish, he looks at me and he says, "You're full of crap." It's not the word he used, but the same substance. And I was like, "Well, don't believe it then." So we spent a couple days hunting in San Manuel. We pack up and we're leaving, and if you leave San Manuel heading back to Tucson, or the freeway that goes to Tucson, the roads go up and down and up and down and up and down. So we go up this hill and we get to the top, and there's this lady on a motorcycle. And I pull over and I said, "Ma'am, are you okay?" She says, "Yeah, I'm okay." She goes, "The gear shift lever fell off my bike and I found it, but I don't have a screw to tighten it back in. I'm kind of stuck." I said, "Look, I can help you with that. I got some equipment in the back of my truck." So I pull over and get out some tools, and I'm working on her bike. Didn't take me very long. She's talking to my good friend, and like they know each other, right? So finally I say, hey ma'am, your bike's working, and she goes, hey, let me pay you. And I went, no, absolutely not. And she introduces herself, and I tell her my name's Ed Hermanski, and she's like, oh, I know your wife. I go, how do you know my wife? I work with her at the bank. In Phoenix? No, well, no, I'm working the Tucson branch. But I know your wife very well. We've been to meetings together and conferences and stuff. And her name's Chris, right? And I went, yeah, I know her. I said, wow, what a small world, right? So she gets on her bike and takes off. And so we get in the truck and we're driving, and I noticed, I call him Coach, his name's Alan. He's real quiet. He goes, what's wrong with you? I don't know that girl. I said, well, I don't know her either. She knows my wife. Did you hear her conversation? I said, no. Yeah, look, I went to Tombstone High School, okay? She said she remembers me. She remembers my brother Shane. She told me the street I lived on. She knew my address. And the house she said she lived in was abandoned. No one ever lived there. And did she say her name was Kimberly? So wait a minute. Let me call my wife. So I call my wife on the cell phone. I said, hey, we're heading home. Should be home in about an hour. I said, hey, do you know Kimberly such and such? She goes, no, I've never heard that name in my life. Well, she works for the same bank you work for. No. I said, she knew you by, I didn't even say your first name, and she knew it. She goes, oh, let me call you back. So a few minutes go by, and she calls me back, and she goes, hey, there's nobody by that name working for the bank, and there never has been anybody by that name working for the bank. I said, well, why'd she know you? She goes, you need to come home, something happened. I said, what do you mean something happened? She says, come on home, please. So I drive home, I drop Coach off at his house, and I'm driving home, and I walk inside the house. My wife's sitting in a chair in the living room, looks kind of scared. I said, what's wrong, babe? She goes, come here. So we go upstairs, and we go into the bedroom and into the bathroom. She goes, after we talked, I was standing here, I was doing my hair, and it looked like somebody was standing behind me, and I turned real quick, and there was nobody there. But I heard a noise before that. I go, what was the noise? She goes, look. I looked up at the vent, and it was hanging off to the side, like somebody had pushed it out. She goes, every time you tell this story, something happens. Usually it happens to you. It's even happened to some of your students, and now it's happening to me. Because, every time I tell this story, your students that hear it, within days, if not weeks, are going to be home, alone at night. They're going to be wondering what those noises are coming from the walls. They might be afraid to lay down and let their hand hang off the side of the bed because something might lick it. Or they might be afraid to look at the vents. Because you see, the more you think about this story, the more you become part of the story. And then even you